Hi, my name is Dr. Alan Branch, and I'm the professor of Christian ethics at Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. And this is the second video I'm producing on Christian ethics and race relations. So this particular video, my goal is to talk about what the Bible says and then show one passage in particular that has been abused by racists and why the racists are wrong. And I hope this will give us some perspective on how we should think about race from a Christian perspective. So, that said, let's kind of dive in here. First of all, let's talk about Christian anthropology and racial issues. First of all, really, if you really believe the Bible and one is committed to the presuppositional idea of inerrancy, which I am, then really racism dies in the 26th verse of the Bible. The image of God. All men are created in the image of God. And so Eve and this is amplified even further in Genesis 3:20, which says Eve is the mother of all living. So again, I've got this here twice for you to drive home the point that we are all made in the image of God. There is no human being who does not bear the image of God. Every person of every race and ethnic background and heritage has the image of God. That means an inherent value attaches to each of us, and no race is better than another race, that all are created by God. And along with that is salvation and the intrinsic value of all people. Think about this, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. 1 John 2:2, he is the propitiation for our sins, and not ours only, but the sins of the whole world. And then in Matthew 28:18-20, we're to take the gospel into all the nations. Listen, the ground is level at the foot of the cross. No group, no individual is better than anyone else. And because of that, the cross really slays racism at its core, because all of us have the same need. We're sinners and we need a Savior. All of us have the same answer, the blood of Jesus Christ. So when you combine these two ideas, the Imago Dei and the salvation that Christ died for everyone, everyone's has the same problem, a sin problem, has the same answer, the grace of God through his Son, Jesus Christ. And this just slays racism. So let me give you, beyond those, some primary passages for racial reconciliation, Genesis 1:26 being essential, but let me move on past that. First of all, just the model and the example of Jesus Christ, despite laws forbidding association with sinners, publicans, Samaritans, Gentiles. Our Lord and his disciples associated with all these people. And in John chapter 4, it says that the old King James, he had to. There was this emphasis for him going into Samaria, a region of people who were considered ethnically different and unlikable and unlovable, yet he intentionally reached out to them and to the Samaritan woman. And then again, I mention again the Great Commission. His command to us was to go into all the world. And then in Acts chapter 1, this is amplified to Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the ends of the earth. So if we have that sort of heartbeat within us, a Great Commission heartbeat to do what Jesus did, there's really no way racism can live within a Christian heart. Then Acts chapter 10 and 11, Peter's still wrestling. He's thinking Jew and Gentile. That's where his wrestle is at and where his conflict is at within his own heart. But it's there with Cornelius that he realizes God is no respecter of persons, that he goes to this Gentile home. You remember the scene. The vision comes down, these sheets full of unclean animals, and this voice says, arise, kill, and eat. And he says, not so, Lord. No, Lord, I'm not going to do this. I've never touched anything unclean. And then suddenly, after the third time he gets this same vision, the messengers from Cornelius' house arrive, and Peter realizes, oh, you're not talking about animals and goats and what I eat. You're talking about people. I understand God's no respecter of persons. So we know, we'll say from Galatians chapter 1, God had to continue to work on Peter in this area, but Acts chapter 10 and 11 sets the standard for us. Galatians 3:27 and 28, for as many of you who have been baptized into Christ have put on Christ. There is no Jew, nor Greek, or slave, nor free, male or female. You are all one in Christ Jesus. Colossians 3:11, there is no Greek nor Jew, circumcised or uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave or free, but Christ is all and is in all. 1 John 4:21 says, if anyone says, I love God, yet hates his brother, he is a liar. I would just tell you right here, it is impossible to reconcile using racial slurs and being a Christian with this verse. A racial slur implies hatred. And here in this verse it says, if anyone says, I love God, I'm a Christian, I've been saved, been born again, yet hates his brother, he is a liar. We cannot maintain hatred for someone else. This certainly has application to our interpersonal issues. We get mad with each other as Christians, but it's more than that. It goes deeper, and this idea that somehow I can be a Christian and hold on to racist ideas is no way that fits with this verse. Again, this verse just says such things are completely incomprehensible for someone who does not love his brother for the person who does not love his brother whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. And we have this commandment from him, that's Jesus. The one who loves God must also love his brother. We're to love our brothers and sisters in Christ. Revelation 5:9, and they sang a new song, saying, Worthy are you to take the book and break its seals, for you were slain and purchased for God with your blood men from every tribe and tongue and people and nation. So racism is inconsistent with Scripture. The idea that one race is better than another race just does not fit with the Bible at any level. What about interracial marriages? Well, actually, this is usually here in the States. It's almost uniquely a debate concerning white and black. If you're watching from outside the States in your own culture, you may have your own debates about this, different people groups. But the Bible doesn't explicitly address the issue. What we do find in the Bible is not to be unequally yoked, and that's spiritual inequality. It has nothing to do with race. If you're a Christian, you marry another Christian. So the first issue is not whether this person is the same race as me. The first issue is, does this person share my faith in Jesus Christ? Are we both walking and searching God's heart? So that's just the heart of the issue. It doesn't address interracial marriages. So from a biblical perspective, there's no reason why a Christian that happens to be white and a Christian who happens to be black, and they love the Lord Jesus Christ and they love each other, they believe that's the Lord's will for them to marry. There's no reason why they shouldn't. I just have this here for fun. So much for that Aryan supremacy. Here's Jesse Owens at the 1936 Olympics, one of the greatest athletes. And kudos to all you Ohio State fans out there. Jesse Owens is a great treasure in your history. So much to the racist supremacy of Nazi Germany. Jesse Owens put that to death. The Bible and slavery. So, a lot of discussion. I'm just going to hit on a few things. So first of all, Exodus 21:16 strongly condemns the practice of man stealing for the purpose of selling someone into slavery. It says, whoever kidnaps a person must be put to death, whether he sells him or the person is found in his possession. So that's a sin. Well, this is basically what was happening in Western Africa with the European slave trade, and Eastern Africa with the Islamic slave trade. So it's just a sin. I do want to say as well, the Old Testament acknowledges slavery, but if you read carefully, the slaves were to be freed in the year of Jubilee. The next slide is just disconcerting. I have it in here because it's someone whom we all respect if you're a serious theologian and you're serious about the Bible. This is a receipt for Jonathan Edwards' purchase of a slave girl named Venus for the price of 80 pounds. And so what I'm saying is he was a man that the Lord used, but was caught up in the culture of his day. And when we're dealing with church history, we have to wrestle with this reality with lots of people in church history on many different issues. So often they reflected the tenor of their day. And this is true with Jonathan Edwards as well. That doesn't excuse slavery, it doesn't excuse what he did. But what it does say is that when we're thinking about these issues, we want to make sure that we think biblically and critically, and it's always a challenge for us to do that, to lay aside our cultural blinders. And if it could happen to Jonathan Edwards, it could happen to you or me. That's I think the takeaway from that. Someone that I've read and learned a lot from. So let's say this about slavery in the New Testament. Part of the challenge when you think about slavery, especially in the United States context, is we think that slavery in the Roman Empire was just like slavery in the southern United States. I'm prepared to argue that in many ways, slavery in the Roman Empire at times was not nearly as bad as slavery in the southern United States. Now, of course, we know about gladiatorial deaths and these sort of things. Certainly, hey, listen, that Spartacus revolt didn't come out of nowhere. I guess that was about 70 BC. So we understand slavery in Rome could be very bad. We understand that. But let me give you a little background, I think, which helps us understand why slavery in the New Testament wasn't exactly the same as slavery as it was practiced in the antebellum South. So let me give you 4 differences. First of all, in Rome, slavery wasn't based on race like it was in the pre-Civil War South. Rome was an equal opportunity oppressor. They didn't care what your ethnic background was. They just wanted to, whomever the conquered people were, that's whom they were going to oppress. Secondly, for many Roman slaves, it was not a permanent condition. You could actually get out of slavery. But if you remember in my previous video, we talked about how, especially with the Fugitive Slave Act, there's this move towards prior to the Civil War, we want to make this a permanent condition. You never get out of this. Third, for some people in the Roman Empire, definitely not all, because it could be really bad at times, slavery was a means of climbing the social ladder. At this point, keep in mind, slavery was different from place to place and region to region in the Roman Empire. There are places where it could be far worse than what was happening in the antebellum South. People worked to death in mines and this sort of things, gladiatorial death in combat. That's really bad. But there were also times when for some people it was a means of climbing the social ladder. My point is that was never true for anyone in the pre-Civil War South. And then finally, Roman slaves could actually own property, but slaves in the southern U.S. could not own property as a general rule. So those are 4 major differences. Also, around the time of the New Testament, it seems that if a slave was going to be set free, that occurred around age 30, which is the age of manumission. I have to keep in mind, many people didn't live to age 30 in antiquity for a lot of reasons, but nonetheless, age 30. Now this, in our context, this gives us some perspective on what's going on in Philemon. When you read the book of Philemon, what we want to hear Paul say is, Philemon, free Onesimus, set him free. That's what we want to hear. But if age 30 was the age of manumission, it may have simply been the fact that given the legal situation at that time and details not available to us, it just may have been quite that simple that under Roman law to set Onesimus free. He may not have been legal. He may not have been age 30 yet. So just keep that in mind when you read Philemon. People have taken that out of context. Racists prior to the Civil War took it out of context. But again, Roman slavery wasn't always just like slavery in the antebellum South. It could be worse. Many times it wasn't nearly as bad, and many times it was more like an employer-employee relationship in many occasions. But this is the key verse in Philemon, or 2 verses. Look at this. Perhaps he, Onesimus, departed for a while for this purpose, that you, Philemon, the owner, might receive him forever, no longer as a slave. Please mark those four or 5 words there. No longer as a slave, but more than a slave, a beloved brother, especially to me, but how much more to you, both in flesh and in the Lord. This really destroys slavery. You understand that if you really accept someone as a brother, you can't own them as a slave. Now, I know Christians did, but Christians who did were ignoring the tenor of this verse. If you read it in its context, especially considering this age 30 issue that's going on, may have been going on, possibly. Again, this strikes at the heart of slavery. So the New Testament, though it never has a verse that says stop owning slaves, goes much deeper and undercuts any foundation that slavery might have by urging us to accept them as our brothers and other people as brothers and sisters in Christ. And so that really destroys slavery. And again, the status of slaves in the Roman Empire varied widely. Some worked in horrendous conditions, fields and mines. Others were trusted administrators and valued for their skills. It is true that rebellious slaves were executed by crucifixion. Go look at the Spartacus revolt for this, which is that's a horrible way to die, worst way to die. So let me give you this quote from Spurgeon on slavery. Now he's always, we have Spurgeon College here, so we have to have our requisite Spurgeon quote. Here it is. He said this prior to the Civil War: some American divines seem to regard slavery indeed with wonderful complacency. They so accustom themselves to wrap it up in soft phrases, they lose sight of its real character. They call it a peculiar institution until they forget in what its peculiarity consists. It is indeed a peculiar institution, just as the devil is a peculiar angel and hell is a peculiar hot place. So Spurgeon, in fact, invited a freed slave to come speak at the Metropolitan Tabernacle before the war and talk about the horrors of slavery. So he was an abolitionist. Let me say a word about the Bible and anti-Semitism. Oh my goodness, the hatred that people have for Jewish people is just otherworldly. It comes from the devil itself. Well, you know anti-Semitism is wrong, but let's try to give some biblical context to this. So my first point for why anti-Semitism is wrong, I hope that I'm not being overly complex, but here it is. Jesus was Jewish. I've always found it completely absurd that people who claim to be Christians, who follow Jesus, the Jewish Messiah, then say anti-Semitic things. That's just so absurd. I'm hardly left at what to say. But Jesus was Jewish, and there's no room for anti-Semitism at whatsoever. It's really, that should be enough, but we will say more. Matthew 27:25, let his blood be on us and all our children. Some people in church history have taken this statement out of context by these religious leaders in Jerusalem at the time of Christ's crucifixion. That is not referring to all Jewish people at all times. It's referring to those group of religious leaders right there. So it's not referring to our Jewish neighbor who might live down the street. And it's abusive a text to try to say so. The early church was largely Jewish. John and Peter and James and all the disciples, they were Jewish. So Paul, he was Jewish. They're Jewish. And we also want to stress that all sinners are guilty of the death of Jesus Christ. All of us are. Jesus wasn't just nailed to the cross by Jewish people. All of us are guilty of the death of Jesus Christ. We all had a hand in that. And so that's why he died in our place. Revelation 12:13 and Revelation chapter 12, you have this dramatic imagery of this woman and the sun. And some folks have tried to, sun and moon and stars and all these things. Some have tried to say it's about Mary. It's not about Mary, it's about Israel. And really what you get out of Revelation 12 is, at its heart, anti-Semitism is demonic. It comes from Satan. And why? Well, the Messiah is Jewish. The Messiah is resurrected, ascended to the Father's right hand. Satan can't get at the Messiah anymore. Well, what can he do? He can go after the nation, the ethnic group, which gave us the Messiah. So I just want you to understand, if someone has anti-Semitic attitudes, they are siding with Satan. The ultimate anti-Semite is Satan himself. As I just say a word too when it comes to anti-Semitism, especially with some laws in Israel today. Hey, pro-Israel, yay, it's the strongest democracy in the Middle East, yet there still are issues of religious liberty in Israel today. And so while we hate anti-Semitism, we despise it, it's a sin against God, we still also want to urge that all people have the right to make a religious decision for themselves, and Christians have the right to share the gospel with anyone, and that's a matter of religious liberty. And we want to share our faith without being unkind to others, but with fervency and love for Jesus Christ to share our faith. So let me try to give a couple of passages distorted by racist, and I'm going to focus on one. There's several. I'm just going to focus on this whole idea about the curse of Ham from Genesis 9. A really peculiar passage. You know what happens after the flood. Noah plants a vineyard, makes wine, gets drunk. He passes out, apparently half nude. The Bible says Ham comes in and looks at his nakedness, uncovers his father's nakedness. Something disrespectful is going on there, and he dishonors his father. Then Shem and Japheth walk in backwards and cover Noah up. When Noah sobers up and discovers what happens, by the way, a dysfunctional family, if your family has problems, this should encourage you. Perhaps you haven't gotten to this level yet. But Noah pronounces a curse not on Ham, but on Ham's son Canaan. And Ham had 4 sons, but he only chose one son, Canaan. It is a perplexing passage. So what is going on there? Some have suggested that perhaps Canaan is already reflecting the disrespectful attitude present in his father, and so that's why the curse fell on him. We don't know. It's pure supposition. But here's what we do know about the curse of Ham. First of all, a careful reading of Genesis 9 shows the text does not address skin color at all. Why is that a big deal? Because in the curse, Noah says a servant of servants will be Canaan. So here's what racists did with that. Racists said, okay, a servant of servants will be Canaan. Aha, we have these black people here that are now in slavery, antebellum South. Well, they're descendants of Canaan, and therefore they're supposed to be slaves, and therefore their skin color is a curse from God, and their slavery is a curse from God, and that's their lot in life, and they should just accept it. Well, you know that's wrong. Well, why is it wrong? Well, first of all, Genesis 9 doesn't address color at all. That doesn't pop up. Secondly, while it is indeed true that the immediate descendants of Canaan suffered because of Ham's sin, there's no indication in the text this would be an eternal curse applied to all people. Tony Evans brings out in Oneness Embrace that these curses on generations usually go to the third and fourth generation and they stop, and I think something like that's going on with Canaan. So it's no anybody remotely related to Canaan, thousands of years later, you're still under this curse. That's nuts. Third, a strong case can be made that this curse was fulfilled when Joshua conquered the Canaanites. And in fact, I think that's what the curse was about. If you want my opinion, that's what I think it was. That when the Canaanites are defeated by the Israelites under Joshua's leadership, that's when it's fulfilled. So it doesn't have anything to do with importing Africans from Africa in 1650 and shipping them forcibly across the Atlantic. Fourth, even if one asserts that African races are descendants of Ham, they would be so via the family heritage of Cush, not Canaan. Go back to your table of nations. For me, this is extremely important. It helps us understand why there was just so much wrong in this curse of Ham thinking. Unfortunately, it still pops up from time to time. People will still toss it out that black people are somehow under the curse of Ham. And let's be clear, that's not true. That's a lie from the devil. So it is a racist interpretation of the Bible. What we need to take away from that, again, is that we all have our cultural blinders, and we need to make sure that we're reading the Bible carefully and not reading our own prejudices into the Bible. And finally, it's pure folly to read modern ethnic divisions into the text of Scripture, since the emphasis of Scripture as a whole is on the spiritual fidelity of different people and groups as opposed to any particular skin color. The Bible doesn't really talk about black Christians or white Christians. It refers Jew and Gentile, yes, in the New Testament. We know these debates. But really the issue is, what kind of Christian are you? Do you love the Lord? Are you sincere? Are you walking in the Lord? That's where the emphasis is at. So the racist interpretation of the curse of Ham is wrong at multiple levels. There are some other passages distorted by racists. I will scoot past them. So let me just say a word, because I am a Southern Baptist, about the legacy of the Southern Baptist Convention and racism. It would be remiss if I didn't do so. So let me just say the Southern Baptist Convention was begun in 1845 because the Triennial Convention, the Baptist Mission Board, would not appoint slaveholders. So Southern Baptists split out. In 1995, on the 150th anniversary of our denomination's founding, I was at this annual meeting. An apology was issued. It's quite well worded. It's very sincere, addresses this issue of the founding of our denomination, and I think it's appropriate. And then in 2000, when the Baptist Faith and Message 2000 was worded, it was ethnically diverse. There was a wide variety of ethnic groups on there, as opposed to the 1963 statement, which there were some good men on that 63 committee, but the 2000 Baptist Faith and Message says very clearly that all people of every race share in the image of God, and so racism is just a sin. So this is a hill on which to die as a pastor or a staff member, this issue of racism, and so it's a sin that must be confronted. When you're talking about the history of the Southern Baptist Convention, here's my advice. Be honest about the bad, celebrate the good. Don't brush under the table what happened in 1845. Don't pretend it didn't happen. Don't soft sell it. Be forthright and honest about it, but then also celebrate the good. And the good we want to celebrate is the wonderful work of our seminaries and the International Mission Board, thousands of missionaries. So let's celebrate the good and be honest about the bad. So here's what the Baptist Faith and Message 2000 says. The sacredness of human personality is evident that God created man in his own image and that Christ died for man. Therefore, every person of every race possesses full dignity and is worthy of respect and Christian love. And it also adds, in the spirit of Christ, Christians should oppose racism, to which I say amen, and that's a great place to end what we're talking about today.